The Jazz Spotlight, episode number 11. Hey everybody, what's up? Yanni Lunga here and welcome to the 11th episode of the Jazz Spotlight podcast. I hope you're having a great day and I hope you're ready for another great guest and a super inspiring story today. In the past you remember that we have had guests who've talked about touring the world in episode 7. We talked about what it means to be a musician on episode 6. We talked about music management in episode 8 and 9. And last week I talked to you about what I called a 10-step strategy for an almost automatic online music promotion funnel. Today we talk about music and we talk about music from a different perspective. Our guest is gonna tell us about his story and the way he went from jazz pianist and jazz pianist who toured the world to online business owner. Like always, I want to remind you that you can find the show notes at thejazzspotlight.com/episode 11. And I also want to apologize with you because toward the end of the interview there was some small audio problem, but I hope it's not gonna affect your experience and I really hope you enjoy this episode. This is Steve Nixon with From Jazz Pianist to Online Business Owner. Enjoy. Hello everyone, Yanni Lunga here from the Jazz Spotlight podcast and welcome to a new episode. Another great guest here today to share his inspiring story. I'm super excited about our guest. When we think about jazz musicians, we know that we think about them as artists who tour around the world, perform at festivals and venues, and sometimes we know that they also do other stuff. They teach in music schools, some of them may write a book, some of them may become producers, so there are different paths to the jazz musician's career. Our guest has taken a pretty interesting path because he has gone from being a jazz pianist to being an online business owner. Let's hear more about it from him. I'm super excited to welcome on the show Steve Nixon. Hey Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Yannick. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, Steve. Thank you for being with us. Let's start right away because we have so many things to talk about. I have so many questions for you. Let's get started with your background as a musician. So, for how many years you've been a piano jazz man?
Well, I started playing music as a young child. I started studying classical, and like a lot of piano players start with, there's maybe a huge, amount of jazz piano teachers in their area, so they find the closest teacher they can find, and it's usually a classical teacher, and that was great. I loved classical music, but at the same time, I was listening to Miles Davis, and I was listening to rock bands. And I grew up in Chicago, so we love our blues. So, I'm listening to blues and I'm listening to reggae and I'm listening to heavy metal and, just a huge variety of different music. And the more I got into music, the more I wanted to kind of experiment and play different things on the piano. And I started playing in rock bands and a little bit in blues bands. And at that point, I ended up searching for colleges and universities that would reflect my interest in all these different styles, especially jazz. And I ended up stumbling upon the Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I'm sure some of your listeners will be already familiar with that school, or perhaps they went there. And so that's when I got real serious about jazz. I mean, I had, I call it jazz in quotations before that. I'd studied it a little bit and I had hooked up with a couple of teachers, but I didn't really get real serious about it in terms of saying, this is what I want to do and really get into the art form and start studying the masters. So I guess you could say I've been a jazz pianist for 20 years approximately, but dabbled in it before that.
All right, 20 years. from the Berklee College of Music, one of the most important music schools in the world. And, during your career, it's just unbelievable the list of great artists you have performed with. You have performed with Grammy Award winners like Buddy Guy, Coco Taylor, then with B.B. King, with Wyclef Jean. I have to ask you, which is the artist you have performed with who has impressed you the most?
Oh man, that's you hit me with a hard question.
Okay, I gave you a couple of options then.
I love it. Well, the thing, I can tell you that Coco Taylor had this amazing ability to control an audience just from the spirit. It's almost like the way that I thought about Coco was that she was almost like those martial art experts who could just with their hands chop through like huge blocks of wood, and just through her voice and her presence on stage had this ability to like essentially drive an audience into a frenzy. B.B. King, obviously, what can you say about B.B. King? Phenomenal player, but also the way he would tell stories on stage and his phrasing, not only as a singer and as a storyteller, but as a guitar player too. They were sort of, different sides of his personality coming out at different points. In terms of dynamic control, Buddy Guy, I don't think I've ever played with anybody who was able to get so much dynamics out of his voice, his guitar, and also magically out of the band as well. It was, he's just had this. He had this presence and the ability to really. I thought I knew what pianissimo was before I started, listening and got on stage with Buddy, but it was a completely different animal once I played with him.
And about jazz piano man, who are your biggest influences?
Well, I'm a student of the style, and so I've listened to a lot of people. I'm constantly checking out new people and transcribing. My number one guy, the guy I love the most, who I've for years I've been studying, is Barry Harris. Mm-hmm. I've probably transcribed 20 or 30 Barry Harris solos. I listen to his discs all the time. He also has inspired me as an educator as well with the way that he shares the art form. So Barry Harris, Bill Evans, huge influence on me. Bud Powell. I've also really been inspired a lot by Chick Corea also. When I first started learning, I was really into Miles. I'm still into Miles, but I don't study him specifically playing wise. Red Garland, I got a lot of my sort of like basic 101 bebop vocabulary from Red Garland. So, how long do we have here? Like 19 hours? I could keep going here and tell you all that I like. But yeah, I think those are probably just the kind of the first names that come off the top of my head. Oh man, I don't know how I miss Oscar Peterson, especially because I've done a lot of these blues gigs over the years and these blues tours, and so Oscar's like this like amazing mix of like swing and a little bit of bebop and these virtuosic blues chops as well. So Oscar Peterson's been a real big influence as well.
All right. So you have had great influences. You have performed with great artists. You have had 20 years of great musical performances. And now you have kind of your career has taken a little bit of a turn, if we can say so, because you have gone from jazz pianist to online business owner. So tell us a little bit about your business. What are you up to these days?
Well, I run the jazz piano education website, freejazzlessons.com. And I started the site in 2011. I was in between tours, and I kind of started just on a whim. I wanted to kind of just throw some licks and some things I've been working on online, just kind of gauge some reaction from people and see what would happen. And, I wasn't sure if anybody would really enjoy this stuff. If worst case scenario, a couple of students I had who were private students with mine in Chicago would enjoy it, and I'd be able to share it with them. And to kind of make a long story short, in the course of 3.5 years, the site has exploded to the point where it's essentially a full-time business. There's premium courses on there, and there's free tips and little videos and DVDs, and it's become this huge community. We get between, and this is just, as of 2014, right now we're about 40 to 60,000 visitors per month. It's really grown. It's become, even though I'm the owner and I'm the driver of it, it's the community is becoming almost like bigger than myself. It's very exciting to see all the impact that having a resource for jazz piano is created for people all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's incredible, like incredible numbers, 40 to 60,000 visitors per month. And you talk about community. And how did you start this community? How did you create this community?
Well, I can't say that I had the 100% insight in advance, or I knew exactly what would happen when I threw those couple licks and chords on there. I didn't. If I said that to you, it wouldn't be true. I've enjoyed being a musical leader. I like teaching, and I like showcasing and helping people. So essentially, that the growth of it eventually, as popularity came along and it turning into a community, it became very natural for me to lead it. But at the same time, it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to build this massive thing. But as I started posting more and more stuff, I started getting feedback from people. People started signing up for the email list, and I'd get emails from people, from Brazil. Hey, Steve, I really like this chord lesson. Can you do more of this? And I get an email from somebody from the Ukraine. Steve, can you explain to me what you meant by this lick? Or I just showed my whole music theory class, and they're in Los Angeles. Your videos and all my kids signed up for the site. The email, which is really cool. So it just sort of, right now it's growing at a very large clip, but it slowly grew. Just sort of the more time I put into it in terms of helping people out, making sure that people were getting their questions answered, and that I was supporting people and sharing what I felt were the most important parts of jazz piano, and helping people get from point A to point B, the faster it grew.
Okay, so you talk about you have an international community. From what I understand, for you, creating value is the cornerstone of freejazzlessons.com. I'm sure that you probably make some money out of it, but for you, the first, or like the cornerstone, it's creating value. And how do you keep up with, once you got started, you started to have visitors, obviously your website started to grow. How do you keep up with it? How don't you get overwhelmed with all this increasing, traffic and community members, and I assume questions, emails, and all kind of things?
Yeah. That's a great question. Well, first and foremost, a lot of coffee. So let's get that out of the way right there. But I do some consulting for online business strategy, and I've been teaching piano for 20 years now. And people say, how do you keep doing what you're doing so much? How can you not burn out? But the thing is that I love, with a capital L, I love music, I love piano, and I love jazz. And I've actually grown to love building community and a lot of the online stuff that I've learned how to do as well. So there's a passion behind it. Now, it does take time and effort and work. And I am, I'm not sitting on the beach drinking Coronas, So, but there's a lot of satisfaction that comes from there. So, and I do take breaks. That one of the nice things about about kind of doing the online thing is that you can kind of make your own work schedule to some degree, but I mean it's very rewarding. Probably 90% of it is just very rewarding stuff. So it keeps me sort of energized and focused. I'm personally, I'm a pretty determined person. I mean, determined or crazy, depending on how you want to. I think there's a certain amount of insanity in a good way when you decide, I'm going to sit down and learn an art form or learn an instrument at a really high level. I mean, there's got to be this passion and intensity, and I think a lot of your listeners can relate to that feeling. So, I think that the long hours and the hey, I'm going to build something and grow things. I mean, I see it almost like I'm learning a style of music, so to speak. But in this case, I'm learning how to grow a gigantic jazz education community.
All right, and let's get more into details about free jazz lessons, because I'm sure that people are curious about it and would like to learn more about it. So is it basically you do instructional videos about piano, and for what is your target audience? Is it beginners and advanced pianists, or only for beginners?
Well, most of the, that's funny that you asked that, because I've been studying a lot of the data on the website, and I've done some surveys recently, and we have a healthy mix of beginner players, complete, I guess the internet would call them newbies, people who've just kind of they've listened to Duke Ellington all their life, and now they want to learn how to, play Satin Doll or whatever after they've been playing Debussy for 20 years, or even some kids who just are, in their high school band, and they want to get more specific training than maybe their band teacher who plays saxophone wants to play. So we've got some beginners, we've got some intermediate players, and we've got a mix of advanced players as well. A lot of the courses are sort of like intermediate and advanced type stuff. One of the courses that we have on there is a premium membership course, and what I did was, and I spent a lot of time every month creating this content, but I teach songs inside the course. And so, so we mentioned the tune like Satin Doll as a perfect example. Well, what I would do is there's actually 3 arrangement levels of Satin Doll. So if you're a beginner, you can still learn the tune, and the tutorial isn't going to be too hard for you. We're not going to do 17,000 reharmonizations of it, and we're not going to use the most advanced chords in the world. I'll make things a little bit easier, but at the same time, we're still really getting the essence of the song. And then I do an intermediate arrangement level of the song, which features maybe some more advanced rhythms or some cooler voicings. And then I want to make sure I'm taking care of those advanced students as well. So that I'll do a lot more reharmonization, more hand independence, some cooler chord voicings, some decorations of the melody. So I try to mix things up a little bit. So I'm taking care of everybody. In the next year, I'm going to be doing just a straight up beginner course just for people who are totally new to jazz. So that's going to be coming out in the very near future as well.
Okay, that's really nice, and I think it's actually great, your approach, that you kind of try to target everyone with an interest in jazz and obviously piano. And what kind of product do you have? Do you have DVDs or streaming videos, or perhaps both?
Good question. We have both. So there's when I was doing a lot of blues touring, I came out with some blues DVDs. So there's just straight up blues piano. You want to learn like Chicago blues piano style, which is really, there isn't much jazz going on in there. It's more like 1-4-5 12-bar blues type stuff. Mm-hmm. It's closer to like an Otis Spann style or Memphis Slim, if some of your listeners are familiar with there. So there's that DVD. There's also a DVD that we created called the Jazz Masters Method DVD, which is this study of the chords and the improv styles. It's a breakdown of improv techniques of 9 legendary jazz piano players. People like, some of the people that we mentioned in the early part of the people like Oscar Peterson, Barry Harris, Bud Powell, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock. I have Diana Krall in there. I have Red Garland in there. So we've got some pretty famous players in there, and that was the first DVD that sort of put free jazz lessons on the map, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Blues DVD wasn't released through Free Jazz Lessons. That was released through my own name previous to Free Jazz Lessons. So those are the DVDs, and then there's this. I guess this would be the flagship course of Free Jazz Lessons in terms of people who want to, kind of get involved with courses and want a little bit more of a systematic step-by-step approach to learning jazz. There's the premium membership course, and that's the course where I was talking about with the different arrangement levels. It's a lot of content. There's a lot of lessons. There's a lot, it's a my philosophy, and I did this all the time even when I was touring. I'm kind of like I'm an over deliverer type person. I want to make sure that I'm giving. I don't want anybody ever to say, "Oh, Steve didn't give me my money's worth." So I got like five libraries of lessons. We have chord lessons, a chords library. We have licks. We have improv drills, harmonic analysis, all these different tunes. There's professional jam tracks that I've created so people can kind of, if it's 2:00 in the morning and they want to jam with a band, so to speak, they can do that without waking up the neighbors. They can just put on the jam tracks I've created and play along with tunes. And a lot of people have told me also that where they're living, there isn't enough jazz musicians around them, and they would like to play with a band, but they don't have the opportunity. Well, this is, I listen. I get a lot of feedback from people, and if any of my audience members are listening, thank you for your support, always for your feedback and suggestions. And they've told me that, said, I want to play with other musicians, so I created, the opportunity for them virtually, so to speak, through these professional jam tracks and stuff like that. So it gives them an opportunity to play solo piano, but also, get the feeling of playing with a band, playing with drums. I mean, being in the pocket with swing and bossa nova, it's like one of the best feelings in the world. So I'm, trying to help people do that as well.
Man, that's awesome. I think it's so great what you do, and I'm sure that many of our listeners will be happy to start, discovering tracks and techniques on freejazzlessons.com. It really sounds really interesting. So for all piano lovers out there, head over to the freejazzlessons.com and check it out. I'm sure you'll love it. Now let's talk about the videos per se, a little bit about the technical parts of the videos. So you usually, I've checked your videos, or some of your videos, so you give a short introduction, one can see your face, and then you like the view it's on the keyboard. What were your biggest challenges with creating videos?
Oh man, see, video production is a huge component of my job, and I've gotten considerably better at it. I've gotten considerably better at it. I mean, I suppose it's just like really any art form, though. The more time you put into studying it, the better you're gonna get. So my philosophy is I wanna make sure that people know who I am. I got bright red hair. I want face. So I make sure to put my face on the intro of every video. I want to talk to people so they can see who's teaching them this stuff. So that's what I do. A little short introduction, introduce the concept. Keep it short because it is the internet, and a lot of times people have busy lives and they don't want to sit and listen to someone do an intro for 17 hours. So short intro, get to the point, and then I talk about some very specific topics in those videos. So if you look at some of the free sample videos I put on, they'll say, "What you're going to talk about? Hey, how do you play 4 bars of this tune, or what's some cool chord voicings to harmonize the first couple bars of this tune, or what are like a couple comp chord voicings you could use behind a singer in a 2-5-1 chord progression. So, I get very specific with that. I have a microphone that I use. I have a pretty good camera. I make sure that I invested in a good camera. I have a tripod that I use over the that hangs over the piano, and I work a lot on the angles. And some of the first videos I did before I, like I said, even before I knew I wanted to do this for a business, I didn't really understand. The teaching was good because I had been teaching for a lot of years, but my first couple videos I did, the piano's a little crooked when I'm shooting my face in the beginning on the screen behind me, and I learned how to do that stuff over the years. But I have a little bit of a production background. I've done some mixing and stuff like that for my own stuff, and also just artists. I learned like Pro Tools and some mixing techniques. I always knew you needed a microphone. And then I use Final Cut and iMovie to edit all the videos. And all the courses I create, the paid courses and the DVDs and stuff, everything is fully notated with sheet music. And I also make sure that I put a lot of text on screen. So, half the people who are coming to the site they have this classical background. They love notes on a page. Okay. And I respect that, and I understand where they're coming from, so I try to notate everything. And then I have the other half of people who play more by ear, more by feel, and they want to kind of like listen to me explain it, watch my hands, but they also could use that benefit of like the chord symbol on the right as my hand drops. I'll put a chord symbol on the screen, and then I'll spell out the notes as well. So I'm a big fan of like multimedia learning. So I guess I put a lot of time into the video editing, and for me, I think it's sort of like I'm trying to think what would somebody want from 20 different backgrounds, and I'm trying to I guess for lack of better terms, kill many birds with one stone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. And is there perhaps some website or some particular resource you have used to improve your video making and video editing skills? Is there something that comes to mind?
There is, and I wish I could say go to such and such site.com or makegreatvideos.com, but that's not what it is. But what I do though is I look critically at what I'm doing, just like I would listen back to a recording from a gig and say, okay, that was cool, that sucked, don't put that again or whatever, or I need to make sure that I soloing over this tune a little bit better, and so I try to take the same exact approach that I would study my own playing and try to improve as a jazz musician for my video production as well. And so I'll make stuff, I'll get some feedback from people, I'll look to see what do I like and what I don't like about that, and also I can look at data as well. I can actually see like, hey, like how long did people watch this video for? Mm-hmm. And if for example I forgot to turn on a microphone, which I don't, but let's just pretend I did, and I see that people only watched that video for 1 minute and 15 seconds, and all the other ones are 6 minutes. Well, that's the lesson right there, that you need to always have the microphone on. Or maybe I did a different coloration of the lighting in the room, because I do a lot of stuff with lighting as well, and then I pay attention to that. How are people reacting to that? And you can, I'm trying to. It's an artistic, so to speak. I hope that answers your question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It does. And let's talk a little bit about the product launch. How did you prepare to launch your product?
Well, that's an interesting question. So the Jazz Masters Method DVD was that was a very easy launch, and the reason why I say it was easy is because people were emailing me and saying, I really like blog tips, and I like the short videos you're doing. They've really helped my playing, but do you have a DVD I could buy? And you keep getting emails over and over. After a while, it's like, okay, I guess I should do something, right? So that was a easy decision as far as that went. And what I try to do for the Jazz Masters method is I try to find a hole in the market, so to speak. I try to find something that I knew I could contribute at a high level, that I felt that there needed to be more specific information on, or delivered in a unique, in a different way than other people had. And so that was one to do that. Now there's a lot of, you need to survey your audience and only do what your customers want, and that's totally true as well. I didn't do that for the first, and like I said, I found that hole in the market, so to speak, and it went very well. I mean, it's still selling them every day, and this is, I mean, gosh, I think we're at about a year and a half or 2 years after the launch here, and every day Jazz Masters method. So apparently it was a good decision. Now, the membership course, that was a combination of requests I got. There, I listened really closely to my audience and when people were asking for specific things. So that was very much and say, hey, I would like more of this. I would like more of this. Hey, can you your next course? Can you do this? Can you do that? So and then I also coupled that in with the fact that, I'm finding information which my audience doesn't know. I'm, I guess, further along the path than a lot of my audience. So it was a combination of really just like things that my audience wanted to learn about, and then also my level of knowledge and my experience with those things. So that was a collaborative effort, so to speak.
Okay. And what was the biggest challenge or the most frustrating thing in the launch process?
Ooh, wow. Well, I mean, it's hard. It is launching a product is the decision of like I said, the Jazz Masters method was easy in terms of the decision of to do it, because people had asked me, but actual creation of it, making sure that it was at a high level set system so people would get it. I mean, I can't sit at like I said, I do drink a lot of coffee, but I do need to sleep at one point. So, how can you buy the thing? How can sales page? How if they want to buy an online streaming version of it, how can you deliver that so it's automated and people can get it 24 hours a day? So, how do you keep costs down so you can keep so, you're not creating a DVD that costs, X amount of dollars, and then the cost of you making is X amount of dollars. You're losing money on it. That doesn't help anybody. So, there's a lot that went in there. I had to learn a lot more about web programming, about business. I had to learn about communication. I had to learn about how do you communicate to people the value of what you're doing? You can't just expect that people understand it, even though they trust you, like you. You still have to explain yourself well if you're going to sell something. I mean, I would say that I worked like probably 50 hours a week creating all the strategy and the content for 6 to 8 weeks at the launch. And then the week of the launch, like right before launch, I'm 90 hours dotting my I's and crossing my T's. I mean, it's insane, man. It is insane, but well worth it. I mean, anything I can do to share music with people, especially sort of in a scalable way, it's totally worth it. So there's a preparation that has to go into it.
Okay, it's just crazy, the amount of work you've just mentioned. It's crazy because I think that sometimes when people think about online business, they picture what you said a few minutes ago, the businessman sitting on the beach with some pina colada or some cocktail and not doing anything. But from what you just told us, there is a lot of work behind it. So for all those who are listening, online business, it can be rewarding in many things, but it's not easy. So it's a challenge. And what advice would you have for example, musicians who are listening, who are, maybe inspired by your story and would like to try something similar, something to come up with a product to launch online? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I would advise them to strong, and I emphasize the word strong relationships with your audience, and demonstrate value. You go in saying, okay, I'm going to get rich doing this, or I'm just going to make it. That's you're not going to be successful. I mean, for the first year and a half, I did free jazz lessons. I mean, it was a labor of love. I wasn't earning an income from the site. I was just helping people out. I wanted to help people make music all over the world. And I mean, if I was expecting the money right away, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened, So I very strong relationships with people. And as a result of building trust and helping reciprocity factors, sort of like psychology 101, or the goal, you right, they'll right too, So, like I said, if you help other people to the ability you can, that's the number one strategy. And I don't mean to speak in a peace, love, and happiness, not get into the nitty-gritty aspects of it, but you kind of have that attitude behind everything you do. That in itself is a formula for building like long relationships and actually building a business, and making a difference in people's lives.
Mm-hmm. That's deep. Making a difference in people's life. It's deep, but I completely agree with what you say, and also the emphasis you put on building, relationships, and thinking of people as people first, and not as customers with the wallets full of money kind of approach. I like it, and again, man, I really agree with you. And if we think about freejazzlessons.com, there might be similar, platforms, website out there that provides music education. So what do you think makes you stand out from the competition?
Well, that's a really good question. Well, one of which I think is my experience, to be completely honest with you.
I'm sorry, say again, I didn't hear.
I said one of which I think is my experience. I mean, I've done thousands of gigs, and that's you can't beat experience like that. I mean, I've been blessed with the opportunity. Some musicians who are right now may say I've been cursed, but blessed with the opportunity to play so many performances and gig and tour around the world and get deep in style and fail and succeed on stage and work on music as in a high art form. And also the fact that, like, man, I've been really also lucky to play with a lot of my heroes, and I've learned a lot from that. And I feel like I have a somewhat of a unique perspective that I can share here, in terms of kind of, getting someone's playing to be able to play at an extremely high level. There's a lot of people teach off of theory. And I don't mean music theory. I mean, like, well, this is what I learned in a book, or this is what I learned from my teacher, but my teacher isn't gigging. They haven't taken that out and brought it out at a club for 700 gigs in a row and know if really this is like something that is actually musical and worthwhile and communicates and people like hearing, Mm-hmm. I think the other thing is that I've been teaching for a lot of years too. I've been teaching for a lot of years, and so I think the fact that I've had an opportunity to sit with of hours and kind of get a sense for how they interact with information that I give. It allows you to kind of hone your craft delivering information. So that's those are great questions. Those are great questions. I also listen to a lot of feedback too, and I'm making sure that I'm we all need egos as artists to succeed to a certain extent, but we also have to have enough humility to know how to take constructive criticism. And I love feedback. I use it as an opportunity to learn. So it's a combination of all those.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And I think that especially the last part of what you said, it's really important because it's through feedbacks that we can improve ourselves and improve what we do, whether we run a blog on a website that offers a product like yours, or pretty much whatever we are doing, we can improve ourselves through feedback. So I like that point. And what are your plans for the future for freejazzlessons.com? You talked about a kind of beginner's course for probably, you said next year. Do you have anything else coming up that you can share with us?
Well, oh yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming up. So, like I said, every month, getting updates who are members, so they're getting very extensive tutorials. It's exclusive to the premium members of the site. So that course is going to be continuing. It's a very big course. Keeps getting bigger every month too. Not only just from content, but members. So there's this. I don't want to call it secret because it's quite. Course is available, but there's all this content that's not live on the free version of the site, so that'll keep going. I have a beginner's course lined up. I'm going to have some other teachers that I'd like to get in there. I've had the opportunity to hang and meet with some pretty special players and call them my friends. So I have some real nice relationships in terms of famous players, and I'd like to get them to start interacting and doing stuff on the site. I've got a Christmas DVD lined up. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff going on the horizon. It requires some like deep meditation
and coffee.
Oh man, of course. Thank you for joining me on that, by the way. There's a lot of stuff on the horizon, and I was actually just doing a strategy session just literally right before we did this call in terms of what I was going to be doing for the second year of the membership course. So, constant state of growth and new stuff going on as well.
That's great, man, and I think it's also important to have long-term strategies, goals, and projects for upcoming months, upcoming years, because I think that's how you keep on having the right motivation and the right focus for running a business. And if you could go back, is there something you would do differently with freejazzlessons.com?
Something I would do differently, not really. Well, okay. I think. Okay. Well, I'm kind of thinking real hard. I mean, I think. Listen, I've done a lot of good things. I mean, but you need to fail a little bit too. So I've made some mistakes, of course, and sending an email and not testing out a link early on to see if it's live. Like stupid stuff like that. And I guess it's not that big deal if it's not that big. You're just sending an email out to your buddy. Whatever, but at this point, for example, I would know not to do that now because we have 11,000 people on our email list. But early on days when I had maybe 200 people on the email list, I didn't send out a test email to make sure the email looked okay or the link was good. So little things like that. But of course, people are smart. They can see what the URL of the link is, and maybe it wasn't hyper. They can copy and paste into their browser, but. I think maybe I would have learned a little bit about video. Some of the things that I learned later on, maybe I would have taken a course in the beginning, just sort of learning in a learning trial by fire, so to speak. Maybe I could have done that a little bit earlier. There's a, you can just go back and look at hindsight and say I would have changed this or I would have changed that. But I'm happy with all the stuff that I've learned and sort of the way that I've learned all these things over the years. So there isn't much I would change, to be completely honest with you.
Okay. And in terms of promoting freejazzlessons.com, how do you promote the website and the course?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I have spent a total of, and you guys are going to need to get your calculators out on this one because it's a I've spent a total in the 3.5 years I've been in business, like $20 on advertisement. So, which made me no money. So I don't do any advertisement at all. It's all word of mouth. Okay, I have a very active YouTube channel. Like the YouTube channel, share the videos, and then Google. You search for jazz piano lessons. My site comes up. There's so many resources. So I want to, once again, if my audience is listening, I want to thank you guys. You guys are the ones who are sharing the videos and sharing the content and sharing the lessons. Most of it's been word of mouth, to be completely honest with you. Now, there are some things you can do in terms of site design and back-end technical strategy stuff to help that, to nurture that, and make it easy for people to essentially refer to the site. I do have an email list, and it's easy for people to sign up for the email list, and I want to make sure that if people are going to sign up for the email list, they're being taken care of. If they're giving me email them, I'm going to be sending them some free tips and some free lessons and stuff. So I guess you could consider that sorts along the lines of just like a means of people, to stay in touch and get free stuff. So that's sort of a strategy, so to speak, but I'm not exactly thinking of it as like advertising, so to speak. So yes, it's a very organic. Now, there's tons of stuff you can do to speed things up. Like I could go and buy $25,000 worth of Facebook and my name and everybody's Facebook feed and anybody who's ever even dreamt about jazz or the piano. But that's not how we do things. So it's more grassroots. It's much more organic than that.
Mm-hmm. I see. And if you were to give one last tip for musicians, but even people in the music industry that are now would like to switch toward online business. Earlier I asked you something similar, and you put emphasis on strong relationships and obviously providing value. Is there something else you would tell them?
Yeah, I would say. Well, we can kind of divide this into two things. So one of which is keeping a very high aesthetic. And so essentially what that means is, and everybody's got to decide that in their own way, what they're, I'm not going to say that everything that I is 100% stroke of genius. It's crazy. There's no such thing as in an art form that is perfection, but I try my hardest, blood, sweat, and tears into the best stuff I can consistently out there. And I'm doing it in everything, man. I'm thinking about that in terms of email design at this point, and how I space words on a stuff like that. So I try my aesthetic extremely high, and maybe 99% of people those little things, but there's 1% who do, and I made it easier for them to learn. Okay, so aesthetic high, and I'm really trying to provide high level stuff throughout the whole user experience. That's number one. And then the other aspect of it is of commitment and consistency. So a lot of people go into and you'll see this with artistic and bloggers and writers and writing with I don't know how many of your listeners are all over the world, but we have this thing in the United States called the Great American Novel, and a lot of people like they have this dream of writing the great American novel. So they'll sit down and they'll write their first chapter and they'll go crazy with it, and they don't do anything like again, and then they get motivated again and they do like a couple sentences, and they don't stick with it, So I mean, commitment and consistency is a huge component of something sustainable and valuable for people that can sort of stand the test of time. To be honest, I didn't learn that from online business. That is 100% from my music training, and knowing that, hey man, if I sit down every day and work on my craft and try to become a better musician, that it will in the long term. So just sort of transferring that aesthetic over into the online world was very easy for me. But there's a lot of people who maybe struggle with that a little bit. So I think if you can develop that attitude, it really, yeah. So the consistency and that commitment thing, and sort of putting on the work boots and the work hat and getting to work every day and trying a site or a business or learn more too. You're trying to that's sort of the recipe for long-term success. And like I mentioned, that didn't come from studying online business. That came literally from me trying better jazz musician every day. That came from my music training, and having that obsession with like become better, try to a level. So the aesthetic is exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. I see. And what is the best way to find you online if people would like to learn more about you? We mentioned freejazzlessons.com a few times. Do you also have your own website where people can learn more about you?
I do. You can also check me out at stevenixonmusic.net. That's my site. These days, though, sort of the hub of my online activity is freejazzlessons.com. And I encourage listeners, if they're interested in learning more about jazz, or they're interested in learning more about improvisation or any aspect, stop by the site and sign up for the email list and get some free lessons and say hello. There's also a form on the site as well. You can drop me an email through there, and my team will make sure that it gets to me as well.
All right. This was Steve Nixon. Steve, thank you so much for sharing your story, for talking to us about freejazzlessons.com, about your passion for what you do, for telling us more about this kind of transition from jazz musician to online business.
It's absolutely a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's great to share with your audience, and I very much enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much. All right, so that was Steve Nixon. Steve, if you're listening, thank you once again for being with us and sharing your story and the story of freejazzlessons.com. I hope this story inspired you, because sometimes when we think about musicians, or perhaps you are listening and you're a musician, you think about new ways of expressing yourself. And what Steve does, I think it's a great example of things one can do, of new ways one can bring his or her own knowledge and experience, and ways one can express themselves. If you want to hear more inspiring stories and more tips, you can find all the past episodes of The Jazz Spotlight at thejazzspotlight.com/podcast. And I also would like to join you. I also would like you to join the Jazz Spotlight newsletter that you can find at thejazzspotlight.com/toolbox. With the newsletter, you will get a weekly email that talks about inspiring stories, more tips and resources, some of which are not discussed on the podcast, so it's exclusive content delivered to your inbox. And you will also get a free ebook that talks about online promotion for musicians and people in the music business more in general. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'm Yanni Lunga, and this is the Jazz Spotlight podcast. Thank you for listening, and have a great week.